So we may have Noah Thomas here. He's with Oregon Public Broadcasting. He wanted to join us and talk to us. I guess they just figured out they have jumping worms in Oregon. Well, I invited him. His name is Noah Thomas.
Okay.
I'll put it in
Yeah.
the chat.
I don't have many pictures or videos that, I know he was interested in, but I'm sure somebody does. By the way, hi Lee. I'm Anna. Um,
Hi.
I started in Vera's lab a couple months ago, so had to get started with this. All right.
So I guess we wait 1 minute. So
Yeah, absolutely.
hi, Erin. You have your spoon collection behind you.
These are only 9 of the 25 I have now.
Wow, 25 different trees that you pick
Species.
up from.
Yeah. Yeah, tree species. Oh, I'm sorry, only 23. 23.
Oh, that is amazing.
Yeah.
So
It's,
is
it's
this
pretty
the
cool.
Swedish thing? Because I noticed at that Swedish house in the
Yeah,
winter they were
the
offering
American
chicken carving.
yeah. Yeah, the American Swedish Institute teaches classes on it, and I do use like a Sloyd knife, which is more Scandinavian, but yeah, yeah.
It's kind of interesting the different hobbies that you get at different places in the world.
Yeah. The spoon exhibit that was here at the Arboretum is actually now on the St. Paul campus in McGraw Library. So it's on display for all of spring semester. So for those of you in St. Paul, go ahead and go to the library and see them.
Are those your spoons there?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, we got to take a lab field trip and check it out.
So we waited 1 minute, so I think we can get started. Do you want to just we give like a 30 seconds who we are? Noah Thomas is here. He contacted us yesterday from Oregon Public Broadcasting, and he wants to learn about jumping worms. So I'm going to start with me. My name is Vera Krishik. I got a grant from the state to look at ways to manage jumping worms. They don't want the state doesn't want them shipped around in nursery material, and they want to have a way to get them out of woodlots. And so we're looking at conventional and biorational chemicals that can be used. We've also been looking at these mustard drenches, which Garima's here from. She's back home visiting her family, but we're going to let her talk about the mustard. It's not what you think. It doesn't work as well as everyone says it does. So we call this a blog. I looked up before the meeting what a blog is, and this does meet the definition of a blog because we post it on the website and we send out materials and we interact. So it's also a community of practice, which was a Minnesota thing. The university started about 20 years ago to get people on a certain subject to talk freely amongst each other. And so we are both a community of practice and blog, and we meet every 2 months. We don't meet in the summer and we don't meet over the Christmas holiday. So this is our first 2026 meeting. And my lab has a lot to talk to you about. So I'm hoping we can just give a 30-second interview and then we can go back and have longer where you can update us on what you're doing. So I'm Vera Krishik. I'm at the University of Minnesota in the Department of Entomology. I've been here 32 years. I've worked for the feds for 36 years now. And I'm really happy to be working on this project. I like the idea of working on natural plant products, ethnobotany. Anna?
Yeah. Hi everyone. My name is Anna Fluke. I started a couple months ago in the Krishik lab. Before then, I was working in a startup lab that was using fungi to create a spore powder that could be used in agricultural crops and improve the health of crops and soil. And yeah, ended up here and have been working a little bit on jumping worms, a little bit with Japanese beetles. So yeah. Happy to meet y'all.
Okay, how about Sin? Do you want to go next?
Sure, why not? So my name is Sinea Harrington. I go by Sin. I am working under Rivera in the Department of Entomology at University of Minnesota. Uh, just a typical research assistant. I'm getting to work on all the different projects that we're doing in the lab right now. Kind of man in the fort while Garima's out of the lab.
Garima, do you want to go?
Yeah, I'm Dr. Garima Gupta. I've done my PhD from India and I'm working as a visiting scientist or postdoctoral associate at Ibera Krishik's lab. So my project is basically with jumping worms only, and we are working with various pesticides, various chemicals to find out the control, proper control, so that we can manage jumping worms. And yeah, we are working on it. Thank you.
Okay, how about Lee? Lee is the founder of the Jumping Worm group here.
Yeah, I'm Lee Freilich. I've been the director of the Center for Forest Ecology at the University of Minnesota for, I don't know how long, 30 years, I guess. And I've been doing research on invasive earthworms, especially their distribution on the landscape and their ecological impacts on plant communities and their impacts on soils. So for the last 28 years, I've been doing that, among other things, and started doing research on jumping worms about 7 years ago.
So Lee was the one who first discovered jumping worms in Minnesota in Loring Park. Do I got that right, Lee?
Yep, that's right.
2007, as I remember.
I think it was a little earlier than that, but
Okay.
yeah.
Erin.
Hello, I'm Erin Buckholtz. I'm the plant health specialist at the University of Minnesota Landscape Arboretum. My job is mostly to, find plant health problems around the grounds and try to find explanations for them. Laura Van Riper actually contacted our organization back in 2018 to say that we suspected we had or they suspected we had jumping worms. And I went out that fall and scouted 22 locations and I found them in 13. So safe bet that we have them all over the place here. I had absolutely no idea what jumping worms were until Laura contacted us. And shortly after that, I reached out to Dr. Kyung Soo Yo, who works with Dr. Freelick on various projects. We got them out here to do some initial jumping worm research out here. And then since then, I've also partnered with Doctors Vera and Garima to work on their project, trying to find gentler ways to control jumping worms, especially in production horticulture.
Angela Gupta.
Yeah, good afternoon. Angie Gupta, University of Minnesota Extension Forestry, and I've done work with jumping worms as it relates to participatory science and management, and I'm working with Hana Kim on a jumping worm project in Kyung Soo's lab, looking at soil erosion, which I'm certain she'll tell you more about. And the two Guptas are not related. It is a super common Indian last name, a lot like Smith or Jones. Thanks.
How about Jim?
Jim Calkins. I'm with the Minnesota Nursery and Landscape Association in research information and regulatory affairs. And obviously jumping worms are important to the nursery and landscape industry. And just so folks know, I'm in the emergency room with my mom, so I might need to leave.
Well, that's not a good story. I mean, your introduction is good, but I'm sorry to hear about your mom, but I'm glad you're with her, Jim. Laura, do you want to say something?
Sure. I'm Laura Van Riper with the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources. I'm the Terrestrial Invasive Species Program Coordinator. The DNR in Minnesota is the regulatory agency for jumping worms, and they're listed as prohibited invasive species. Thanks.
Hannah Kim.
Hi everyone, Hana Kim. I am an extension educator with the University of Minnesota. Like Angie mentioned, I'm working on this research project looking at the soil impacts and erosion that jumping worms have on forested hill slopes in southeast Minnesota. I work primarily on coordinating our volunteers who go out to different sites across southeast Minnesota, and they're taking those measurements for us. And then we also work on outreach and just providing more information about them and spreading the word.
Shannon?
Yeah, I am a non-scientist here, but I've been working with some of the folks who are on this and some others to try to create the Healthy Soil Collaborative, which launched and went live late last year. And we're hoping to create an alliance of researchers and raise, public and private funds through that, work with some stakeholders and try to, just help wherever we can to make the research, to help support the research.
Okay, and Noah, do you want to say something?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for inviting me. My name's Noah Thomas. I'm a video producer reporter over at Oregon Public Broadcasting. I've been working closely with Samuel Chan at OSU and other OSU, Oregon State University Extension staff who have been monitoring and tracking worms in Oregon, and I'm producing a short documentary about the jumping worms here in Oregon. And I appreciate everyone who has gotten back to me. I've been sending emails out to everybody, so apologies about that. But yeah, so I'm currently actually looking for photo before and after photos or videos or any media content that can demonstrate impact the worms have been having outside of Oregon. So if you haven't already been in contact with me via email and you do have access to media content that you'd be willing to share or know someone, please get in touch with me. Um, uh, I would love to use it. And yeah, thank you.
Noah, can you put your email in the chat so people can send you anything they find?
Absolutely.
Okay, who would like to start on what they've been doing or what?
Hey, Vera, we missed Dr. Dobson.
Oh, okay, sorry about that.
No, that's all
Okay,
right. I arrived late.
okay.
No, hi. So I'm Annis. I'm director of research at the Yale School of the Environment and a research professor here as well. I work on jumping worms from a community ecology, ecosystem ecology perspective, impacts for the most part. Moonlighting a little bit as a speaker at garden clubs, especially in Ontario, where I'm originally from. But yeah, more on the research side of things, just doing talks for fun.
Well, thank you for joining us, and I hope you continue with us. So just a little background, we have a website. I got money from the state to create a pollinator conservation website, and we have a jumping worm section on there. And some of the resources are, there's a table. If you remember, Julie Semro used to organize our meeting, and she got a job with industry, which is great for her. She graduated in May, and she got a job right away, so we'll miss her, but she's doing well. So Anna and Sin have taken over organizing this blog. But we have a website that we maintain with all it's a table that has all the states that rank jumping worms in some way. Every state seems to have a different ranking system. I'm going to ask Laura about that in a little bit. So Laura, get prepared for that question. And then we also have a table with extension resources from different states. So you can go there and click. I think one of the issues that a lot of people are having are identification keys. So last time we met, a subset of us, through Shannon's group, through the Healthy Soil Cooperative, we were trying to figure out where we could have people post information about where they're finding jumping worms, because the iNaturalist site really doesn't have a lot of jumping worms posting. And I think the ED, I'm going to get it wrong, somebody correct me, that site doesn't either. So we got in the conversation. We want to get citizen science groups, like some of you are working with, posting where they're finding jumping worms, but then the issue is how do we identify them? Because as juveniles, as I understand it, you can't identify them till they're adults. You can identify them maybe to genus, but not to species. And so we need better keys or better DNA. So that's something we can talk about later too. I may have something. I have a collaborator that is willing to work on this. We just need to find money. So we'll talk about that later. So that's about what has happened since last time we met in terms of our community of practice. So Lee, do you want to go first and talk to us about your jumping worm progress?
Yeah, we have a paper which hopefully will be published soon about transects at the Arboretum that go from areas that are European earthworm infested into areas that have jumping worm infestation on top of that. And this was a former graduate student, Tyler Bauman, and he looked at various things, including soil temperature, and it turns out the jumping worms cool the soil back down to about the level it was before the European worms invaded. So European earthworms raise the temperature of the soil 1 to 2 degrees Celsius at least at midsummer, and the jumping worms cool it down, and that has to do with the physical impacts the worms have on the soil. Jumping worms increase the bulk density and they eat the leaf litter very early in the spring. So it has good heat conduction and very little insulation, whereas the jumping worms turn the top 2 inches of the soil into loose granules with air spaces between them. And they don't start eating the leaf litter until later in the season because they're annual species that hatch in the spring and aren't big enough to eat leaves until midsummer. So there's more insulation there, and then so the soils get much cooler. We also discovered that some of the European species that live deep in the soil can coexist with jumping worms, and which live right up on top of the soil. We don't know if that'll be permanent or that's just a phase, because we didn't find that on all sites. But at least the European night crawlers disappear as soon as the jumping worms come in, and that's probably because they're competing for the same food source and because night crawlers build a permanent burrow that they use throughout their life, and the top few inches of that would be disrupted by the invasion of the jumping worms. So, I mean, it is the second invasion. Jumping worms are the second invasion coming in on top of a European earthworm invasion. And that's true almost everywhere. I mean, European earthworms are much more well established just about everywhere in the United States and Canada. So it's a second invasion, and the fact that the European worms had already changed things has a lot of implications for the effects of the jumping worms. And we only have one native earthworm species in Minnesota, and we actually just discovered that recently. So now, of course, we're going to try and go and look and see if the jumping worms are affecting that native earthworm species. They obviously have a lot more native earthworms in Oregon than we do here. And also in the southeastern US, there are a lot more native earthworm species. So, the native one we have in Minnesota is Bimastos rubidus, which used to be called Dendrodrilus rubidus. And before that, it was Dendrobana rubidus. And it's the unhappiest species I've ever seen. It jumps to a new genus like every decade. But this recent classification as Bimastos, which is a North American genus, is based on genetic evidence. So hopefully that will finally stick. But it lives underneath moose and deer droppings and under decaying logs in special microhabitats, basically. But we need to see the impact of jumping worms on it, and we haven't done that yet because we just discovered we have a native worm. But all of these invasive earthworms have huge impacts on all of the soil biota, on native plants. They reduce native plant diversity. The European worms reduce it, and then when the jumping worms invade, they reduce native plant diversity even more, at least in our studies. And they interact with deer browsing and so on, because if you have invasive worms and a high deer population, you have two stresses on the plant population. And climate change is going on at the same time. So all of those interactions are things we're studying. And let's see, Kyung-Soo isn't on today, so I'll just say Kyung-Soo and I are also involved with the soil erosion study that was mentioned a few minutes ago. Clearly, jumping worms cause erosion on steep slopes, but it turns out so do the European earthworms. So there's a lot of soil erosion going on now, which is a threat to the sugar maple basswood forest type in southeastern Minnesota, because all of those forests are on steep slopes.
Are there any questions for Lee?
Just that I dropped a couple links on Bumastos rubidus. So Lee, if you're able to see those links, just either confirm or refute if I got the right one.
Okay, I'll look.
So Lee, when you say jumping worms are replacing night crawlers, and both of them do damage to recruitment of new seedlings, do you think jumping worms are going to be worse than night crawlers in the long run?
Probably, because they loosen the soil so much that it's hard for new seedlings to take root, especially on slopes. And literally just a squirrel walking by, or we have a lot of turkeys, for example, at the Arboretum, rooting around in the soil because it's so loose. It's literally like cat litter, and it's just hard for seedlings to germinate and take root in that type of environment where the soil is so loose. Maybe on flat sites, maybe it's not so bad, but I do know that if you jump around the seedling germination stage and plant plants from a nursery, that they will grow in the presence of jumping worms, but it's got to be really hard for germinating seedlings with all that shifting soil.
Okay, so thanks, Lee. I look forward to hearing more about your research with Kyung-Soo on the recruitment and movement of soils. That sounds like a real big issue.
Yeah.
I know in Vermont they're worried about this. Shannon's people are very worried about this. So
yeah, and somebody just put a comment in the chat. Can I put the paper about them cooling the forest floor in? And I can't do that yet because the paper is still in the last stages of revision. So, but hopefully it'll be published soon.
Thank you. I kind of joined late. I appreciate that.
Kate, can you introduce yourself to us?
Yep, apologies. Kate Higston, Plants Program Director for the Leech Lake Band of Ojibwe.
Oh, cool. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
All right. So thanks, Lee. I've got a question for you. Do you have any good keys? We had this meeting, like I said, with some of Shannon's group from the Healthy Soil Initiative, and we were trying to figure out the best keys to use. Do you have a key you prefer?
I have a whole bunch of keys. I've never found any one key for earthworms to work out very well, and I usually end up looking at several different keys depending on what's going on in a given site. Maybe at some point we should try to develop a really good key to earthworms just for the Midwest, but I have like a whole stack of keys.
I think that would be a really good idea, Lee. Based on our discussions, it's hard to do the research without knowing the taxa. So I think that's a really good project to try to get some money from maybe some graduate student to work on with you. So bringing up identification, so that's morphological identification, a key. you can also use DNA. And so we have regular qPCR DNA, and then we have eDNA. So what our group tries to do for everybody, since you volunteer your time to talk with us, we try to put together on our invitation a list of the new papers in case you're missing them, and cumulatively the papers we've listed over the year. So we have some new papers in there, and so check it out. There some of the papers that were done by Ben Miller's student. She published her two master's papers, and there is one there on eDNA. So eDNA is kind of a bulk way you look at DNA in soil. And so, Lee, have you heard anything about using eDNA that's working well for identifying amanthus in soil?
I have not.
Okay. So there's a paper there. It's the first one we found. And we make it a priority to keep looking for any new papers on identification morphologically or through eDNA or qPCR. So I have a I have a postdoc who's now a professor at University of Alabama, and she bought a new qPCR machine to work on our Japanese beetle project. And she's willing to try to see if she can work on developing qPCR technique for the jumping worm species. They have a lot there in Alabama. Remember, the first jumping worms released were called Alabama jumpers. So she's sitting there at the place where jumping worms were first identified. So she's interested in working with us on that, and again, trying to find some money to do that. Any questions for Lee? We can we'll have another set before we end. I'll ask for another round of questions. Who would like to go next and update us? Volunteers? Angela, Aaron, you have anything new to talk about?
Kyung-Soo and his GRA Nate Lund and I are working on a perspective article for the Frontiers in Forests and Global Change. It was a special edition related to the use of or how helpful public gardens and arboreta, botanical gardens and arboreta are to, as you know, for sentinels for pests. And so we're talking about jumping worms in particular, of course, but really it is from a perspective of botanic gardens. So I'm mostly helping Kyung-Soo and Nate with the jargon related to botanic gardens, which they weren't familiar with. But really, sentinel plantings are really just what we have out here at the Arboretum, and so how they can be used as sort of early detection for emerging pests. And so we're also going to just be talking about how, you know, public gardens can be instrumental in this kind of research from our perspective on the work that we've already been doing, and how it can be useful to, you know, the visitors for public gardens as well, once you can connect all those, or once you can make all those connections.
Okay, that sounds really good. So I know you did a survey last year and you got a bunch of botanical gardens that got back to you, and they all seem to have jumping worms, right?
I only got like 6 or 7 responses. I do plan to attend the American Public Gardens Association meeting in San Francisco this summer. And so I'm almost kind of tempted to see if I can do an in-person survey.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Okay, well, keep us updated on that one. Hannah, do you have something to say about your citizen science project, Robert?
Yeah, I was just going to type in the chat. So Nate, the grad student or PhD student, he's still analyzing the data and going through that. So we haven't received much new information about that. Just that, of course, he is seeing erosion on jumping worm infested hill slopes. And of course, in our comparison hill slopes with European earthworms as well, seeing erosion in both of those sites, a little more in the jumping worms areas. That's all that we have, though.
So I know, thank you, Anna. I know that Shannon, I don't know if you know about this, but this subset of people were talking about, you know, getting more postings for maps of distribution and then species. And then we came upon this issue of what's the best key. I know they were talking about some research in New York State. So, you know, we have a lot of groundwater from the glacier. New York State stores their water in reservoir, and they don't have a lot of lakes or streams. So New York City water and places like that are in these reservoirs. and they're finding that jumping worms are causing, just as two people have identified, erosion, and that's causing soil to get into these reservoirs, and then they're getting algae blooms from it. And so it's kind of been bumped up to a really important issue trying to stop this erosion in forests. So I don't know the paper. I think that was research in progress. Do you know anything more about that, Shannon, about that Cornell research?
I don't know about that myself.
Okay.
But
well,
yeah.
We'll have to get a hold of it, Shannon, if you can ask around, and I'll talk to you again and put it in the next news, in our next blog invitation, because it seems like they were getting data. So it's really nice to know the parameters people measure. So when anytime you try to get a grant nowadays, people want to know the economic and environmental impacts of an invasive species. And so if you can show it's affecting water quality, that's a huge thing to get grant money.
Yeah, I think that would be great. I can touch base with the New York researchers too, specifically for more if they have more specifics. And I think that would be great to start getting on the website. It's time to really start ramping up the communication, the blogs, the updates on that. And as you say, impacts like that are kind of why the public is going to care and hopefully donate money to help do the research. So that's a great lead, and I'd love to start.
Okay, well, thank you. Yeah, please take that one over. So we did have two meetings now that Shannon's here. We had, the Vermont group had a webinar, like, where a bunch of us talked, and I think it was, how many people attended that one, Shannon? That was last June of 2025. I think it was a couple hundred people attended it. And then about a week later, we had one with Maine, and it was a subset of people with some additional people. And I think that one was like 800 people attended it. So these were just an online session where we were pre-recorded, and then people could go and watch. So there's a huge interest in people learning about jumping worms out there. So Shannon associates with the University of Vermont people, with Joseph Gurez, and that's where this Healthy Soil Initiative came from. So that was one of these online webinars, and the other one was through the Maine Natural Resources Department. So those were both in June 2025, and they are online somewhere, but we can put it in the next invitation. We'll kind of start to quantify where you can go for jumping worm resources. Who else would like to talk? Somebody? Laura, do you have anything to add to us? Laura, I want to ask you this question about why isn't there a national listing for invasive species, like the categories? Why is it so variable between states on how they're listed?
Yeah, that's a great question. Right at the federal level for invasive species, there are things like the Federal Noxious Weed List and the Fish and Wildlife Service Injurious Wildlife List. So there are things that are federally listed as invasive species, but things that are listed at the state level, right? Each state passed their own laws, decided which agency was going to be in charge of what, and gave categories their own names.
So like I said, we maintain a website. And again, if you're writing a grant, that information is good for, economic, how it's spread, and maybe you can go to that states and find some economic information. So we do maintain that. And so when you go there, you have to look at the categories, because they're not all the same, how they list them.
Right, and words can sound really similar, like regulated versus restricted, but they have actually very different meanings.
So how does something get bumped up to be like a quarantine? Like emerald ash borer, if you talk to us a little about state federal quarantine, how they overlap. So emerald ash borer, Asian ladybird beetle are the two I can think of that are both quarantined. There's more pine.
Yeah, so insects in Minnesota are regulated through the Minnesota Department of Agriculture. And so I am not involved in those quarantine regulations. But yeah, quarantine seems to be mainly what's used in the wording used for insects.
So quarantine is at the state and the federal level. So once it's listed as a federal pest, do you have to then list it as a state, or can some states not list it?
I am not an insect person, so maybe someone else wants to speak to that.
Okay. So right now in Minnesota, as I understand it, we don't have a way to manage jumping worms, so you can't list it as a quarantine pest. because all quarantine programs have management in it. Is that correct? Do you think jumping worms will ever be quarantined, or they always keep the regs they have?
So again, quarantine is a Department of Agriculture thing, and in Minnesota, it was determined that DNR, Department of Natural Resources, is the regulatory agency for earthworms. So they're regulated under the DNR's invasive species statutes as a prohibited invasive species.
So prohibited doesn't mean you have to. So, okay, so educate me. So would prohibited ever become quarantine, or no? Is that apples and oranges, or?
Right, DNR doesn't use the term quarantine.
Okay, all right. And you never will. And since MDA doesn't regulate earthworms, so jumping worms are never going to become quarantined in Minnesota. Do I have this right?
Yeah, unless for some reason, the regulations moved over to Department of Agriculture. I'll put the link to the Minnesota invasive species laws in the chat. So most of the species that DNR regulates are aquatic. So DNR is the regulatory lead for wild animals and then aquatic plants and animals. So that was the whole discussion that the different commissioners had. Are earthworms going to be considered plant pests, in which case Department of Agriculture would be the regulatory lead, or would they be considered wild animals, in which case DNR would be the lead, and they decided it would be DNR.
Okay, got that. Okay, well, thanks for that. Do you have any updates for us? We have jumping worms listed as the most restricted, right? I might get this wrong.
Yeah, they're prohibited invasive species. So there aren't that many categories. The prohibited invasive species are the ones where you can't sell them or move them. The other big category is regulated invasive species, and those are ones that are legal to buy and have, but you can't release them into the wild. So think of like some aquarium pet type species. Those are the big DNR categories. I don't have any regulatory updates, but maybe just for something kind of fun. Can you see my screen? The Minnesota Department of Natural Resources has a building at the Minnesota State Fair, which is like a very big state fair in the country. And we have an invasive species display area. And Sasha Lodge and DNR Forestry crocheted a jumping worm. It has a smooth clitellum, and there are small brown strings giving it the 14 segments between the mouth and clitellum. So it was a fun thing that we could have out at the table to help draw people over to learn about jumping worms. So I just thought I'd share that as kind of a fun thing for people to see.
Fun. It looks like a cat toy to me.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much, Laura. All right, anybody else? Anise, do you have something to add to our group?
No, not yet. Still lots of things on the to-do list, but nothing
Okay.
fresh right now.
So I think we'll go on to my lab then. So we have this grant. We're trying to find out how to manage jumping worms. Tea seed meal works, but it's not listed by the EPA as a pesticide, so we can't at the university recommend it. So it's probably been recommended 50, 60 years by golf, started in Scotland and England. They're recommending it on golf courses. And golf course magazines talk about it, and they can recommend it, but we at the university can't recommend it because it doesn't have an EPA registration number. So my job has been to work through the USDA IR4 program and the EPA. I started that like 3 or 4 years ago. Number of hurdles, and Jim was involved in this too, and it just came to fruition this year, and it failed. So they really don't want to help us on this issue. So we're not going to go back to them. So the IR4 program usually helps you collect scientific data and help amend a label. So if there is an existing label out there, you could get jumping worms on the label. But they have a 4-year cycle. This sounds ridiculous, but it's true. And so in order to get any help from them, they have to put you on a survey of growers. The growers have to say, yes, this is an issue. And then 2 years later, you have a meeting and then you can get some money. So it would be another 2 years before, maybe even longer, because there's no survey yet. So in our time, it doesn't seem, and they don't give out that much money anyway. So I think we're back to just trying to continue state support for this research. So that was a failure. I worked on it very hard, and Jim helped me, and it was not our fault. It was the IR4 program just doesn't seem interested. So then there was a lab called Vegilab outside of, they're registered in Basel, Switzerland, but I've since found out they're a California group. And they have a liquid form of tea seed meal. And again, they sell it as just a soil amendment product. And so Garima has been testing a bunch of different chemicals to see how they work against jumping worms, and 3 different tea seed meal products. One was called from the Andersons, where they take the raw tea seed meal and they modify it a little bit to make it more dissolvable. And then the other is the raw product called Planet Turf. And then there's this Vegilab. So we talked to Vegilab actually January 2nd, and we gave them our data. And they told us they were going to get this registered within 2 weeks. So then they've been talking to us, and that was kind of, they said they're going to get it registered through as a 25B EPA product. So EPA has this ability to backdoor registrations of products that are natural products, like organic products, like Bacillus thuringiensis, or soaps or oils or diatomaceous earth, something like that. And there's 2 tables that for 25B registration, there's 2 tables. One has the actual active ingredient, one has the adjuvant. Saponins, which is the active ingredient in tea seed meal, is on table 2 as an adjuvant. And on table 1, saponins aren't there. So they met some problems with getting it registered, which I knew was going to happen. And so it's kind of an odd thing they're doing. They relabeled their tea seed meal product as a jumping worm killer, but there's no EPA registration. So I explained to them, we still can't recommend it, even though you put jumping worm management on it till you get an EPA number. So that kind of, and that costs money and time. So I think they're back trying to figure out how to do that. So we have at least a group interested in spending some money to try to get a real EPA label for tea seed meal. Their product is a liquid and it's more concentrated, so you don't have to carry around 50-pound bags. So that would be very helpful for homeowners or nurseries. I don't know about large scale use in naturalized areas, but we have made that progress, finding one chemical company interested in trying to figure out how to get a registration. Before we go on, do you have any questions about that one? Okay, so I want to show you some data. So I'm going to have to share here. So there's graphs and tables, and in the long run, I decided the fastest way to look at this was a table. And so I'm just going to tell you a table that has all our data on it. So there's Anise, I looked her up. So let's see if I can get this one to now work on the. So can you see this? Can you see a document, a Word doc? Somebody say yes or no.
Your desktop here.
We're seeing the Poshmark.
Oh, you see that? That's weird. Okay, let me close all that. And let me try to go back here and stop share and share again. And see what happens here. Do you see a Word document now?
Yes.
Yes, Vera.
Okay, here we go. All right, so this is the table as of January 1st, 2026, of all the research we finished. We have graphs, but it's probably easier to look at it here. So this Vegilab product. This is the Andersons, where they make the tea seed meal into a dissolvable granule. It just dissolves faster. This is the original raw product from China. We looked at bifenthrin. We looked at thiophenate methyl fungicide. We looked at Botanigard. Monterey nematode control is a different species of plant that also has saponin. This is what the EPA told me to try because this already has a label. So if it worked, we would just ask them to amend their label. And then we tried soap, and we tried another Vegilab product called Geraniol, which is geranium, which is what makes Japanese beetle lures fragrant. And so this is geraniol is on the, when you try for a 25B EPA registration, that is on table one because it's a natural plant product. But unfortunately, if it has a yellow box here, it says it works. And unfortunately, even up to 10x label rate, it doesn't work. The soap doesn't work. The Monterey nematode doesn't work up to a 10x rate. Botanigard doesn't work up to 8x. The fungicide, which growers gave feedback that they noticed jumping worms are killed, at 16x, we could get no mortality. Bifenthrin, we could get some mortality with jumping worms at 4, 8, and 16x label rate. And then these are the tea seed meal, the 3 products. And the Andersons and the Planet Turf work really well at 1x or 2x or 5x label rate. So at just the label rate, they work really well. The Vegilab, you have to go up a little higher, but it's a liquid. So in terms of bulk, it's much easier to carry around. So tea seed meal seems still to be the easiest way to control jumping worms. And so now it's going to be up to this Vegilab. Here you see how to spell it, for them to try to register this product. So I talk with them every 2 weeks or so, and they want to make money, so they were trying to get it done for this season. But I don't think they're going to be able to get a 25B because the saponin is not on table 1, it's on table 2. And EPA will only register non-toxic 25B registrations if it's on table 1. So we're making progress, but we still have some obstacles here. So that's where we are with trying to get a pesticide registered for this summer.
Yeah, Anise, you had a question?
Yeah, so I had a question, especially when it relates to, for example, I'm asking a question for myself. When I'm talking to people from Canada, where I don't know, or different provinces in Canada where I don't know what the procedure is, how do you talk about this without recommending it? Do you say this is in progress, but we don't yet recommend it, or like what? Are you very precise in your language of how you talk about this to gardener groups or not? Other groups.
So I bet every one of us who has an extension component to their job is going to do this differently. What I say is this is a very old product. It's been registered for years as a soil amendment. Golf courses use it to manage jumping worms, but I can't tell you to use it because it's not registered by the EPA. And we're trying to get a pesticide company to register it. So until it's registered, I can't suggest it, although the product is available through Amazon and works well.
But it's illegal for anybody to use a product for a non-labeled use. So,
okay, but it's not like you don't talk about it at all until.
No.
Great.
I just explained I can't recommend it, and it's
right.
You know, the EPA, the definition of a pesticide by EPA is anything that mitigates a pest. And so you can't use anything that doesn't have an EPA registration number. So that's what this dialogue is about. So this is a non-toxic product. I mean, if you look up the literature from China, this is in vitamins. Actually, the COVID shot had some saponin from tea seed meal in it. I mean, it's used to help people with bad guts. It's used as the vitamin supplement. I mean, the medicinal usages are huge. They put it in animal feed to help with digestion issues. So it's hard to say that it shouldn't be registered. It should be registered as a non-toxic. And so maybe this company, Vegilab, will make some progress with EPA to try to get it registered as other natural plant products are and get it on that table one. But until it gets an EPA actual registration number, even a 25B will get a registration number. Or it will say on the bottle, exempt from registration as 25B, as a 25B. So it's neither now, and we're working on it. So all you can do is explain to people the issue and tell them it's available, but you cannot recommend it.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
Maybe
Well, when I was giving my last talk in January to a bunch of about 300 growers, some growers came up to me and said, well, we've been using it in our pots. And we were talking about the fact that it's basically when you get those granulars, they fermented, this is ground up ovaries of a plant that they use the ovaries to make oil. And then they take the residual product and grind it up and put it in animal feed. And then they make bags of it as this tea seed meal. But it's primarily used in China. It's first as cooking oil, and then the residue product is ground up as animal feed. We were talking with them about how to do this. And so it is eaten all the time. So the grower wanted to know if they could make a compost tea. So if they could use it by using it as a soil amendment. So here's what they were suggesting. This was a dialogue I had with them, that if they take this and make a tea out of it, which is what they do in China before they spray it on ponds to kill snails that harbor diseases. So you don't get snails harboring diseases when you're in the rice fields. It's used all the time in China for this, to stop epizootics of disease. So if you make it into a liquid as a tea and then drain out the solid, now it is a soil amendment. And if you put it in the pot then as a tea, as a compost tea, so then add it to real compost tea that they use. So you're basically just adding carbon to pots to help plants grow. Then that would be allowed. Because it's just, you're making a compost tea and you're just adding a chemical to the carbon to help the plant roots. So that may be in the long run the way we get around this, by telling people to add it to water, drain the solid off, and use it as a tea. And then we don't need an EPA registration.
And then quickly, sometimes people ask, well, what's the timeline that we're looking at to have this on-label use? Do you have a sense for
I
that?
started this 3 years ago. I got a grant a year and a half ago. And I'm still hopeful that this Vegilab is going to get this registration. It costs money. But now this idea of recommending it as a compost tea, I can recommend that.
Gotcha. Okay.
So the product is registered as a soil amendment by the EPA. By the state of Minnesota, it's registered as a soil amendment. So if I say to you, you want to add carbon, make this into a tea with compost, and put it on your whatever you want to take care of, I can recommend it that way. It works within 48 hours, so it's a pretty quick. And what it does is it strips the mucous membranes and the worms just disintegrate. So it works very quickly once you use it.
All right. Thanks.
So Garima's been trying to work on this mustard issue. And I'm going to summarize it a little bit first. So when
Hey, Vera.
Yeah,
Go
sorry,
ahead.
Kate has a question.
Oh yeah, go for it. Sorry.
Thanks. I guess it's interesting because I was just reading about compost tea as a soil amendment to help microbial activity, but so I wonder if there is potential for people to confuse that. Also, I wonder what is the feasibility of this in a forested setting. So, I mean, there would be non-target species that would be impacted if we were trying to use it as an early detection, rapid response, maybe instead of like an entire forested area is infested with jumping worms. These would be conversations that we would have to think about from, Laura on a regulatory standard as far as when we think about this.
I think we have to have conversations here. I'm willing to try to do this. I'm going to try to do this summer and see if it works that way. So the nice thing about that Vegilab is it's more concentrated, so you're not lugging around literally a 50-pound bag. But you don't really need that much per square foot for this to work. So we are going to look at some insects this summer to see if it has any effects, but the mode of action is not a toxicity. The saponins just degrade. Saponin means soap-like, so it has the same properties of attaching to fats, and so it just degrades the carbohydrate cover on earthworms, the mucus. And that's why it's used for animals for gut issues, because it helps move the gut along and digest things that adhere to the mucus layer in the gut. So
Sure.
That's why it's used a lot in animal feeds to help with gut issues and in people. So it is not a toxin. So we will look at non-target effect, but I doubt there are any. And the more I read, the more it helps plant roots grow. So there's actually a paper this year about adding it to pots, and they're getting increased root growth. So I don't think I'll have to be better able to answer you, Kate, after the next summer. But it seems that it is not going to be an issue, a non-targeted issue, either for the roots of plants or for non-target insects. Because of its mode of action, it's not a toxin.
How long does it stay useful in an application?
So it seems to disappear pretty quickly, which is what the EPA would want. They would want something because it just dissolves the mucus, and then it basically, I don't know if I can't use the word degraded because I don't know that right now, but I think basically it just, becomes less concentrated and isn't active because it's highly soluble in water.
Okay, if I jump in, Vera, just with my observations. So I worked with Vera on the Vega Lab and the Anderson and Planet Turf tea seed meals with jumping worms this summer. And yeah, all three of them did provide some mortality. The Vega Lab product was, we used it, as you could have seen from Vera's previous document, at way higher than the label rate. It killed, at any rate, it killed all the worms in the treated areas. We did nursery containers. We did 3-gallon pots. So it was a closed system, not an open forest system. And so with Vera's project, we are focused more on, like horticultural industry, nursery. Yeah, because since that's one of the primary, what we think is one of the primary modes of spread for jumping worms is let's kind of start at one of the sources. So we were using it at very, very high rates. It was incredibly effective at any of those rates. And within 3 days, all of the treatment pots, all of the jumping worms were completely dead. And then all I can say is I agree with Vera. I don't know about residual or how long it persists in the pot, how well it binds to soil, I think, or rather growing media. What I can say is that all products that are like that, the tea seed meal, have a very distinct smell. And so the granular, the Andersons and the Planet Turf products, the smell went away after a few days. But with the Vega Lab product, that smell was pungent the entire time. And so that's not a good indicator, but it was just an observation.
Yeah. I appreciate the time to answer my questions. Thank you.
Can I ask one?
Rima, do you remember in your long-term experiment, there was no chronic effect, right? Grima, are you still there?
Yeah. In our experiments, like after 4 days, whatever worms are left alive, they are alive further. So that was we have seen. So after 4 days, there was no mortality effect. There is no lethality of tea seed meals.
That's an answer. So Grima, we have a lot to talk about, but it's too much for one meeting. So we did do acute and chronic studies, And in the chronic studies, it's gone. So by day 3, there's no mortality of the worms. So it means
Yeah.
it's just either being diluted or degraded. I just can't say degraded because I don't know the chemistry, but it's probably getting diluted because it's highly water soluble. So we are not worried about non-target effects, but we are going to test this in mulch piles. So I don't know about in the forest, but we're going to test it in large mulch piles, which nurseries also have, and to see how far down we can kill the worms with this. So this now is a good lead into this mustard story. So when we started this work, everybody, I think, I first started to talk to Erin, who's been working on this for years, and she was talking with the people at the Wisconsin Arboretum, and everyone is recommending mustard drenches to bring the worms to the surface. And one of the first things we found is that the kind of mustard, the trade of the commodity of the mustard you buy, the trade name, makes a huge difference. So American mustard, which would be a common mustard, did not work. So we had to go to Penzeys, which is an expensive spice company, and then both of their mustards worked. But it didn't work the way that you want it to work. It doesn't seem to bring them to the surface. They run away from it. So we don't understand this yet. We're not seeing the same things in the lab that people are seeing in the field. So Grima's in the middle of a bunch of studies. She started on some, and this is, I just wanted to show you. Grima, maybe you want to explain this one again. We get into some chronic issues too, but this is just the beginning where we started. Grima, do you want to
Yeah.
explain this?
Yeah, so we did like mustard experiments by two ways. One is like we treated the paper in the container, and then we see if worms move towards treated side or the untreated side. So treated with mustard only. So we saw that when we treated the surface, the paper towel, then they moved towards untreated side. So that was quick response, and they were getting agitated, and they responded well in that case. But when in another experiment, when we took the soil to 4 inches and 8 inches, we didn't see any effect of mustard, as we have seen in blogs and other platforms that mustard is working and they're coming to the surface, but we didn't see that. We didn't see much numbers, maybe 2 3 out of 30 worms they are coming to the surface. Otherwise mustard is not working at all. So yeah, it was surprising.
So in this data Grima got, you can see this American spice. This is the blue. The worms didn't leave that one much at all. But the American spice extra hot Chinese mustard and these Penzeys, whether it was regular mustard or extra hot, they're all out of the pot. They're all out of the treated side in 10 minutes. This is with one species. We've done it with another species. We replicate everything 3 times, so we have a very high sample size. And as Grima said, she then moved into pots, and we don't see what people say is happening in pots. They are not coming to the surface and dying. So then we did a meta-analysis. We have somebody called Stephen Lee in the lab, and he's been helping Garima and Sin on this. And so he's done a meta-analysis with Sin, and they've been looking at papers. And the earthworm people say that they use this, but it isn't a good tool because you can't use it as a survey tool because it doesn't, the worms that come to the surface don't reflect how many that are in the area. So it's kind of odd, but that's what the research is showing, that mustard. So we thought mustard would be a synergist, and maybe they could formulate the tea seed meal with mustard. So they came to the surface, and the tea seed meal killed them quicker. But from the data we have so far, tea seed meal, even this Penzeys extra hot stuff, doesn't seem to work. So that was a very big surprise to us. So I think that's enough of our stuff. Does anybody have any questions, or anybody else want to add some stuff?
I think I just have a quick question. Like, if mustard is turning out not to be as good a tool, I think that, on the Healthy Soil Collaborative website, on resources, one of the common things that you tell folks is, you could test this. Should I be removing that? Is that no longer something that we should be recommending to people to try if they're curious about worms in their backyard?
Yeah, see, that's a really good question. The way we do it is we have to do the research, then it has to be peer reviewed, and then once it's published, it's only one data set. So it'd be really nice if Brad at the Herrick at the University of Wisconsin tried this too. So that would be up to you. After one published study, do you want another one to say the same thing? Or do you want to just go with the one study? But we don't say anything until we get it peer reviewed. So sometimes this fall we're working very hard to finish this mustard part now and submit all this for publication. But that's probably at the end what we're going to say. It's not a tool that's worth using. But going in that direction of trying to use the tea seed meal as a compost liquid and using it to add carbon to the soil and also control your worms may be the direction that we can advocate. I'd have to talk to Laura about that and our MDA here in Minnesota to get everybody lined up. But there's no reason that if it is registered as a soil amendment, if you're using it as a soil amendment, why people couldn't use it that way. So we'll try to see if that's a way to get it more available to the public. But right now you can buy it on Amazon. That's where I get it. I bought her a 50-pound bag from Amazon. But the liquid is going to be better for homeowners. It's much smaller volume and easier to use. This Vegilab liquid.
Anise, do you have a question?
Yeah, I was wondering if you had maybe at the end of the meeting any pictures of the setup. This is in the lab in soil or in a meso like a what's the setup here? Because that we find really
Start
impact.
every bioassay with the question, does it work at all? So we want to have, like anybody's OD50 bioassays, one that's just a simple structure. So you use 8 by 11 containers that you get a target, and we put maybe an inch or two of soil. We put the worms in the soil, and then we spray the pesticide on top. And then from that we figure out the dose, and then we go like at the arboretum we use regular 3-gallon pots which have about 8 inches of soil. Then we try to say, okay, this chemical does work, what rate do we need to penetrate 8 inches in a pot? So it's a 2-tiered study we do. So that thiophenate methyl that everybody said works, it may be if we go up the higher dose, it may work. But the problem when we were told when we started this, that EPA isn't going to like to recommend things if it's like 20 times the dose they recommended, because then you do get into environmental impacts of it. And then they would have to go back and do another study to show the impact on the environment. And of course, they don't want to do that. So much higher doses, we were told, are an issue. But I'll have to put that in writing from the EPA, because clearly bifenthrin and thiophenate methyl might work at higher doses, but tea seed meal works at just opening the bag and pouring it on the soil.
I guess I was wondering about the mustard in particular.
Oh, the mustard one. Well, the mustard one, we started out taking that 8 by 12-inch container, and one side we just put paper towels on one side. No soil or anything, just put the worms on top, the 2 species of worms separately. And we treated the paper and then put the worms on top of the treated paper. Then we decided, okay, that doesn't do anything. Now we're going to put 2 inches of soil and put the worms in the soil and then treat on top of the soil. And this is helping us figure out the rate. And then we go to the 8-inch pot. And we're still in that, we're working on that part of it right now. But we don't see much of an effect in the beginning studies in these 8-inch deep pots.
Like the mustard isn't making them move at all.
They're not coming to the surface.
Interesting.
They may be moving away from the stream as it goes down.
What's the soil?
But clearly, the higher mustards in this, can you still see this figure?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Clearly in this figure, these are the higher mustards, the Penzies,
Yeah,
regular mustard and Penzies and hot. This is the American Spice hot. Clearly they move away from it.
yeah,
So clearly it is an irritant.
yeah, yeah.
But they don't, what we're finding is they don't go up. They can go lateral and stay up in
Gotcha.
the soil.
Gotcha.
And then when you read the paper of people who worked on earthworms, they say the same thing, that it doesn't work. So I don't know why. It may be people put it on a compost pile that has gazillion worms, and some of them come up, and we just don't have enough worms to do that. So we can't, we're in the middle of this mustard thing right now.
Yeah, because one thought that came to mind is perhaps in like natural habitats going down, it gets much more compacted, so that's harder. And so going and maybe also going laterally is harder, but coming up is just sort of the fastest way to get away from it. Um, so maybe it has less to do with do they go what direction they go, just by within their own um decision making, and it's more to do with like what's the fastest way out. This is really, really interesting.
So our conclusion
Yeah.
was, if you're using, we wanted to use it as a way to concentrate them so the tea seed meal
Yeah.
gets better. And
Yeah.
what we're finding is the tea seed meal works so well, you don't need the mustard.
Right,
And
right.
mustard isn't working as a good survey tool. So just go ahead and use the tea seed meal. Because with
Yeah.
the tea seed meal, they don't come to the surface either.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
right, when you put tea seed meal to Aaron, they don't come to this. Oh, Aaron didn't. They don't come to the surface.
Sure, sure, sure. Interesting. And can I ask one last question, which is it potting soil or is it like garden soil, or what kind of soil are you using in these
So
pots?
when the first people started to work on these jumping worms, they couldn't get any experiments to work. And
Yeah.
we find out you have to give them a media. So you have to
Yeah.
make a soil that they like to live in.
Yeah.
And so you have to work on the CNN ratio, the percent moisture.
Uh-huh.
We buy extra microbes to add to the soil.
Uh-huh.
And so wherever you have a worm in your bioassays, you have to use their media.
Yeah.
Because regular soil in a bag doesn't do it for them.
Right. Okay.
So then you get complexities of them responding to that, and they're not responding to your treatment. So once you get the right soil media, and we have a recipe for that works, and you can now get the worms to forget about running away from the poor quality soil, and they stay there, and you can get data on the effect of the pesticide.
Yeah. This is really interesting because we do find that jumping mustard works sometimes, a lot of the time, but then sometimes it just doesn't work even though you know that there's worms there. And I wonder if the lateral movement might explain that. Yeah. Thanks
What
for
brand of
sharing.
mustard did you use?
I don't remember off the top of my head. Not one
What
of
we're
these.
finding is this Penzies, which is a well-known company.
My mother-in-law swears by Penzies as the spice. She says it's the best one out there. It's the highest quality. So I was just texting her. She's always saying, "You should get this one. It's so much better than every other one. Like not for worms, for cooking." And I'm like, "You're right. Turns out Penzies."
Yeah, there's a Stephen Lee went looking, what was the definition of mustard? Because it ends up what people call mustard. There's a yellow mustard seed, and Grima says in India there's black and brown mustard. And it ends up, some companies called hot mustard was really yellow mustard with cumin or other chemicals in it. So it took us a little while to figure out really what was just a regular, and it's one chemical that they have higher amounts of, a glucosinolate. But so people are adding chemicals so they don't have to get the higher quality mustard.
Yeah.
So,
Just as a little anecdote, I've also noticed that if I keep the mustard for too long, the efficacy goes down. So like I can't use last year's mustard, even if it's in a sealed bag. Um,
so one of the things we found from a cook, Indian cook was talking about it, is in order to get these glycosinolates to become active, you have to put the mustard in water and let it hang out for a while.
Yeah, yeah, but not too long.
if you don't put it in water and just
Yeah.
would put it dry, it's not going to work at all.
Right.
So
Yeah.
you have to put in water and agitate it for the definition of a while. I don't know what that definition is, but
Well, we usually do like 15 minutes, and then we say that it needs to be used up by, I think, 2 hours. Um, Otherwise, it seems like it starts to oxidize a little bit or something. Anyway, we can move on. This is very interesting.
but it's good to know you have had mustard issues too.
Well, yeah, or just like yeah, that it does mysteriously sometimes seems to work and other times not work. And I wasn't sure if it was like a soil moisture thing, and it could be, but
Well, this one cook says you have to dilute it in. So the directions, so we did dilute it to apply it, but if some
yeah.
people just put throw the mustard down and throw water on it, it might not work as well. So the glucosinosylates have to be released through dilution.
Yeah, but yeah, some attention put towards timing of things, and yeah, that's really interesting. Thank you for indulging me.
Yeah, that's what we're here for. So I think we chased some people away with our technical talking, but that's okay. Everybody can stay for what they want to get out of it. Does anybody else have any comments? Right. So I thought this was great that this is what this blog is for, that we can all get out of it what we need for our different programs. And Kate, I don't know if Kate's still here, but we will keep you in mind about what to do about we are going to try mulch piles this summer, and again, can that be used? Maybe Erin will allow us to use some real hills at the Arboretum. Does anybody else have any questions? So we'll see each other in two more sessions, 2 more months, and maybe Shannon, if you'd like to talk about your website and what your program is about, I think that would be good if you're willing to give a little.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely not just mine. It's very much team effort. But yeah, we went live finally, um, sort of last part of last year, Herculean effort, but finally. And then we found we needed to spend a little bit of time getting the administrative backend platform to work the way we wanted. It, this was sort of new terrain for all of us, so ultimately we were able to find a consulting group who were able to walk me through how in the world to get the administrative part of Google Workspace working. So we've pretty much got that ironed out, and just kind of waiting for the last folks to finish signing in. I think Annis and Vera, you both need to sign in, but I'm going to need to
I'm guilty of
deactivate.
this. My brain is registering that. I know I didn't sign in.
But at this point right now, your temporary passwords will have expired. So I'm gonna after this, I'll reactivate them, and then I think it's gonna give you a week or so to do it again. And
Okay,
then
I'll do it today.
yeah, when we've got everybody signed in, and hit me up if you have issues, because a few people have had issues. I had to tamp down the some of the security measures for now so that folks can get on. And then everyone's going to need to have two-factor authentication set up because if members of the public email us, we want to make sure that we're protecting everything. So we've got I've started setting up a little list of resources for folks, including some of the admin stuff. So everybody has a list of like how we interact with our fiscal sponsor and responsibilities like that. Passively, without doing anything, because we were kind of working out the kinks, we still raised $700, which was nice.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not like we haven't pulled any of it out yet. So we did submit, Brad, Joseph, and I pulled together the first of our annual reports to our sponsor, Ecologistics, which was the easiest one we'll have because there was nothing to report. All we had done is passively take some money in, and we had not removed any and distributed any. So hopefully the one next year will be very complicated, full of money that we raised and then distributed. Um, and we need to start, this is the year we need to start figuring out how to fundraise. So I expect, we're all going to get together probably in the spring or summer again, and we can talk about really the low-hanging fruit. for the research. I think we should consider this year one. Um, so the researchers and what they want to research, that's kind of your guys's area. And it's, I got to start kind of doing the communication side. So I've got a bunch of blog ideas so that we can start making this more of a resource. I would love to make sure that on our resources page, Vera, we have a lot of those same resources that you're gathering, just so that we're able to really provide a lot of materials to the public. So updating that and keeping that full of hopefully the most up-to-date stuff. And if that's compost tea or saying mustard may or may not work, that's all really good information. So I think it's just kind of time. We've worked out most of the kinks. I'm finalizing a few tweaks to the website because the public, we need to make clear that we don't have the answers right now. So people would reach out for a bit asking for the answers, and we would try to say, no, we exist because we don't have them. And we're hoping to raise the money to support the research so that we can all get the answers. So making that messaging just a little bit clearer is something that we want to do and can do in the next week or so.
Oh, maybe we should have a meeting and people can give you some feedback.
That would be great. I would love that. Yeah. Yeah, we getting the team together would be great. Getting like everybody sort of ancillary, like just giving us feedback on that and tweaks that we can make. This should be a living website, and that would be amazing. Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks, Shannon. So get ready next time to just, some people don't know about your initiative, so what it's about. Is there anything else before we leave today? I'm really happy that you all came. Jim, do you have anything? Jim may be with his mother. I don't know if he's here right now. Anything else before we go? Laura, anybody else? Well, it's nice to meet the new people, and we will meet again first week of April.
Yeah, thanks for the invitation. This was
Bye-bye.
great. Bye.
Yeah. Good to meet
Thanks.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.